Hello, Goobers. It's me, your favorite Goober, and I have an update for you today. This is going to be me talking about Project Fear and the first idea for the plot line. And there's some context I wanted to talk about. Last night, when I was making my video right before bed, as I usually do, I was kind of talking about how I was a little frustrated at the fact that I didn't have any ideas for Project Fear in terms of like any kind of plot. I knew I had a couple of, pieces, but I didn't really have anything that fit together in a way that made sense. And as I was kind of venting about that and talking about, I was like, I was just a little lost. I was like, I've been thinking about it. I don't know what I want to do. Uh, right at the end of that attempt, I had been reminded of a detail of something that's very recent that I started working on. It's a brand new idea and concept that I am going to explore here in the coming weeks, I'm sure. But yeah, when I was reminded of that fact, it sparked a couple of attempts, but then I couldn't really keep it very coherent. So I decided to call it for the night, go to bed, and I said I'll do it in the afternoon. So here we are. The reason I was so frustrated with the idea that I didn't really have a story in mind for Project Fear was because for Project Elemental, I really did have a lot. Well, I shouldn't be using past tense. It's another work in progress project that I have. But for Project Elemental, I have a focus. I have something in mind that I know I want to achieve, and there was a bunch of different little plot points that I had, and all these little ideas, all boom, 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 and these areas, these cultures, people, characters, all that. I had these ideas and I could place them, and they all kind of slowly began to meld into this story. And so I have a lot more to work with there. But for Project Fear, it is, brand new in comparison to Project Elemental, but I didn't have much of anything. And so moving on to the pieces and how they connect together, I'll give you the rough kind of breakdown. So the first piece was that there are this group called the therapists. They're deployed by an unnamed organization. I literally don't have a name for it yet. And they deploy these therapists as an emergency response to help take care of these monsters known as irrationals. Um, in this universe, you can manifest a power dictated by something you're afraid of. There's some rules and whatnot, but that's the idea. Your fear, if you're afraid of that thing enough, can manifest into a power. And if you are consumed by your fear, you can transform into a monster known as an irrational. Imagine fight, flight, or freeze. If your response was flight, you might be prone to becoming consumed by your fear. But if your response is freeze, you're more than likely somebody who can be a candidate of being consumed by your fear. Um, and so the therapists, it's their job to come and save the individual because you can be saved. Um, I haven't really considered what the medical uh, what's the word? Repercussions would be. Um, but I'm going to definitely make it something where it's like, it's not a good thing to transform into a monster. Um, But yeah, when you manifest your powers, I didn't mention this, you also manifest that monster. And the monster is literally your fear, and your power is, well, I won't explain everything. I guess I should just kind of leave it there. But the point is, there's these monsters. There's these therapists. They take care of them. And I've decided that the main character, she's going to be interested in becoming a therapist. And yeah, it's kind of the start. The second piece was an idea that I randomly had, but I did like it enough to keep it around. And that was, simply put, this idea that there is always this political struggle for power and control, I would say. But, just take a look at militaries, right? And the power struggle for stronger equipment. Now, the government is also pretty notorious for being shady in some of its acquisitions of power and equipment. And so, to look at that, I had an idea where there was this facility that was taking children, right? They're very malleable, so they're trying to manipulate these children into being afraid of things in hopes of having them manifest extremely powerful abilities. And that was just kind of a random idea that I had. I was like, it makes sense. I was going to push for that. And so that was the second piece. And then the third piece, the most recent concept that I'm going to explore was this question of what is the power system beyond what we already know. I genuinely don't know yet, um, and I'm the creator, but this question is a good one because as of right now, I've really begun or began to understand all the mechanics of my powers, and while I still need to, figure out the limits and all that, there's a much deeper understanding. But there's one detail that's kind of mysterious, and I'm hoping that I can use that to my advantage. And it's just what are the fears before you manifest your powers, right? There's certain rules that, for example, the more common a fear is, the harder it is for somebody to be consumed by that fear. And so what's the logic behind that, right? That's the kind of questions we're asking. And that's where the story can get pretty alien, I suppose. Like it can be pretty we can do a lot with that. But like what's the logic behind that? Because the more common a fear is, you would have to be proportionately just that much more afraid of the thing than like the average person, right? Arachnophobia, super common. You would have to be extremely afraid of spiders to manifest powers and, you know, all that. And so, why? Why is there that kind of logic? What dictates that? That's an interesting question. I need to find an answer for it, but there's a lot of freedom in that regard that I can get very creative with on how to answer that. And so, with all three of these pieces, there is a very easy plot to make from all of those. Main character wants to be a therapist. So, we can have a little bit of a journey of her becoming a therapist. We can introduce, some characters, some side characters, get to know a little rowdy group, and then we can move on to, this bigger plot line involving this facility that's creating these super soldiers, basically, because not only do you want these children to manifest extremely strong powers, you want them to A, have good control over it, and B, be well trained physically beyond just mastery of their own power. So they're basically creating these super soldiers, and we can kind of get into a plot line there. But the very nature of what they're doing would result in this kind of research, and so then we can kind of spark this question of what what is fear in this universe beyond what we already know. And so, maybe we get to the point where they are trying to take down this facility and prevent any more children from being harmed, and they then get set on a newer question involving the mystery of their their world and their power system. And that's kind of, to me, it feels like a low-hanging story, like low-hanging fruit, but I don't know, I can work with it. It doesn't have to be something super profound and deep and intricate. That wasn't really my intention with it either. So I was pretty satisfied with it, simple as it might be. I I don't know. And to be fair, I've not formally educated myself on the creation of a story. I've only ever had, a couple of tidbits here and there throughout my life. I never took a class about writing a story or anything like that. So I definitely have a lot to learn and whatnot. But for now, this is what a novice has come up with. So I hope that's interesting. I thought it was pretty basic, but I wasn't upset with it. I was satisfied, and I wanted to share that. But last night, man, I couldn't keep a train of thought. I was tired. I wasn't speaking properly. I mean, even even now, after having had a good rest, I'm still a bit of a dork in that regard. But eh, I managed to condense it down to 11 minutes, better than 20 minutes, you know. But that's everything for today. I'm gonna leave it there. We're just gonna took 2 attempts today. I don't really feel like taking too much longer. So, with that being said, good night and good luck. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye bye.